The Saints might have lost on the Week 18 scoreboard, but got their biggest win of the season with Tyler Shough establishing himself as the future quarterback in New Orleans.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I'm going to give you three big things the New Orleans Saints must address going into 2026. We'll also discuss why the New Orleans Saints are set up perfectly for a successful season next year, set to compete very well within their hapless NFC South division. And we're kicking everything off with the New Orleans Saints getting their biggest win of the season. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much. Whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today, create an account, and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $50 in lineups when you place your first $5 lineup. The New Orleans Saints might have lost on the scoreboard in Atlanta, but they got their biggest win of the season. We said from the very beginning of the year, even while the quarterback competition was still raging on and the conversations around, will it be Tyler Shough? Will it be Spencer Rattler? Even though we all knew that we were eventually going to see Tyler Shough become the starting quarterback for New Orleans, at least at the latter part of the 2025 year. That worked out exactly as we expected it to, or not exactly, I shouldn't say that, but it worked out similarly to what we expected to, although the timeline was a little bit different than what many of us expected. But nonetheless, New Orleans might have lost 19-17 against their division rival Atlanta Falcons. We'll discuss some of the impacts of that loss a little bit later on today, but the biggest win that the New Orleans Saints could have gotten in 2025, they got by discovering and finding out and being confident that Tyler Shough is their quarterback of at least the near future for right now. Near future, just because you want to give him 2026 to go out there and prove that he can be your franchise guy. I have very little doubt that that's exactly what he's going to do in 2025. The Saints absolutely have their quarterback of the future in New Orleans, and that was the biggest win that they could get in 2025. You upset the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You went on a 4-game win streak. You could have upset teams earlier on in the season like the San Francisco 49ers. Maybe you could have gone out there and shocked the world in Los Angeles up against the Rams, and none of that stuff happened. Or some of those things happened, like Tampa, the 4-game win streak, all that. But regardless of any of that stuff, the biggest thing that the Saints could have done in 2025 is find out that they have their quarterback. And if you listen to Chase Young, who said that the reason why fans should be optimistic about the Saints is because Tyler Shough is their QB1. You listen to Audric Estime, who I talked to in the locker room after the game, who said Tyler Shough is a dog and that he hopes to play with him for the rest of his career. You listen to Justin Reid talk about how much getting that franchise quarterback makes a big difference, and the contract situation, which then allows them to be able to build not just around a long-term starting quarterback, but a long-term starting quarterback that for the next 3 years is on a second-round rookie deal. That's huge. I got a text message from our good friend Julian Council from over at Locked On Panthers, and he was like, I was looking at Tyler Shough's contract, and it's kind of crazy that the LSU Tigers are about to pay their starting quarterback, whoever it ends up being, more money than Tyler Shough is getting paid at the NFL level as a second-round draft pick. And that is kind of wild. One of these days, we'll do a whole thing about the impact of NIL and what it could mean for rookie minimum contracts and all those other things. But that's for another show at another time. This show is about wrapping up this Week 18 game and a little bit of the season, which we're going to continue to do all throughout the rest of the week. But this gives the Saints their most important win of the season. This team could have gone 17-0, and none of those wins would have been better or bigger or more impactful or more important than finding out that they have their quarterback of the future, quarterback of the near future. We'll see how 2026 goes, but I feel very confident about Tyler Shough. And so I think when you look at his preparation, you look at his ability to bounce back and respond. Yeah, he threw an interception late in that game, up against Atlanta, but then he came back on the very next drive and then threw a dot to Ronnie Bell, who made a fantastic catch in the back of the end zone, one-handed, left-handed, while he was being held on to, which should have been a defensive pass interference penalty, but it didn't matter because he caught the touchdown anyway. Tyler Shough showed you what he could do again with his legs, running in for a touchdown the first time, beating Jalen Walker around a corner there. Showed you later on with a big long run too, that he can go out there and escape up the middle and go and pick up some big yards for you. I thought that everything that you saw from Tyler Shough in this game was a microcosm of what we've seen over the course of the year from him. And to be fair, to be honest, it wasn't a perfect game for him, right? Threw the interception late that ended up turning into the go-ahead field goal that ended up making a big, or not even a go-ahead field goal, but created enough distance, right? Turned a 6-point game into a 9-point game. And so New Orleans going down and scoring a touchdown meant that they needed to get an onside kick. They did that, but they didn't get the onside kick recovered. So yeah, he threw the interception. He completed a lesser degree of passes than he typically, or a lesser percentage of passes that he typically completes, but big deal. Outside of everything, he showed you that he's still your guy going into next year. And that's a massive win for New Orleans. I still think he should be considered the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's not going to be the betting favorite because the bettors want you to bet. So they're going to put the quarterback second. So you go and bet on the quarterback because it makes sense that the quarterback would win the award. But I do think that there's a real shot, even with this game, that he ends up getting that honor at the end of this year. Then he becomes the 4th player in franchise history to become Offensive Rookie of the Year. The Saints could have done a lot of winning this year. They didn't. They overperformed though, right? They overachieved with 6 wins. There's no doubt about that. But no matter what game they could have won throughout this season, none of it is a bigger victory than learning that they have their quarterback of the future in New Orleans, in Tyler Shough. Absolutely huge. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints are now going to roll that momentum into 2026, and things are setting up perfectly for them to be competitive next year. Let's get to that as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Drip Drop. Hey, carnival season's coming up, so you know you're going to want to stay hydrated, whether you're out there on the parade route, hanging out with friends, whatever it is that you're doing. And Drip Drop is perfect for exactly that. We're talking about doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your mind work better. So you might even be able to make some better decisions during carnival season this year as well. I love Drip Drop. I've been using Drip Drop for quite a while. I really, really like it because it gets you like 3 times the hydration without all the sugar of like half the amount of sugar of all those sports drinks. They have a cherry limeade. That's my absolute favorite. I'm a sucker for anything cherry limeade. And so you should definitely go and check out Drip Drop today. It's just little packets, dump them in water, drink it up, bang, you're off and running. Portable, so you can take them everywhere as well. And right now, Drip Drop is helping out all of you by giving you 20% off of your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at dripdrop.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the easiest and most fun way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick 2 or more players in your favorite leagues, whether it's whether it's pro basketball, pro football, maybe it's college hoops, whatever it is you're looking for. They're going to give you a statistical projection, basically. So it might be, Tyler Shough, 250.5 passing yards. If you took more or less on those, that's how you set your entrance. It's super, super easy. If you took more today on Tyler Shough, that would be a win for you. You win a bunch of those and you end up walking away with some big time prizes, as well as opportunities for things like flex pay as well, which end up making sure that you can still get paid even if one of your picks misses. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's going to get you $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, family. The New Orleans Saints got their biggest win of the season by unlocking their future quarterback, and now get the opportunity to take advantage of that as quickly as this offseason. Because even though the New Orleans Saints got an L on Sunday in the season finale, see F word finale Friday, see what I did there? In the season finale, they got a lot of dubs too. Not the least of which being getting an opportunity now to go into a last place schedule in 2026. So the way that this works is that you're always going to have sort of divisions that you're going to play against. You're going to play against your division, and you're going to have some rotation of AFC, NFC divisions that you end up competing with, typically a couple of NFC divisions and an AFC division. And then you also get the finisher that is the same as you in another conference and then in two of your other NFC conferences, if you're the Saints. And so for New Orleans, because they lost this game by just 2 points, despite all of the injuries they had on offense, despite everything and all the odds being stacked against them, they had lost by 2 points on a game where they missed a field goal, by the way. So could have been a go-ahead game winner to Ronnie Bell, but nevertheless didn't work out that way. And so now the Saints play a last place schedule. And so what this has done is that they were going to play the same division finish team at the AFC West, the NFC West, and the NFC East. And so they had a chance, the Saints, to finish second, third, or fourth before the weekend began. Once the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won, it gave them the opportunity to finish either third or fourth. But even still, that was the difference between playing teams like the Arizona Cardinals and playing teams like either the San Francisco 49ers or the Los Angeles Rams. In this case, the San Francisco 49ers. They had the situation where they could have played against the Washington Commanders when they would have gotten Jaden Daniels back for next season. Instead, because they finished last in their division, they're going to play against the New York Giants. They could have been in a situation they were playing against the Kansas City Chiefs, who finished third in the AFC West. Instead, they'll face the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Saints now, who are building a competitor, are going into the 2026 season with 11 games against opponents that had losing records here in 2025. Now, what we know is that looking at the division finish or the record from a previous year isn't always indicative of how a team performs or is competitive the next year, right? Those two things don't always correlate. The Saints, for instance, are hoping to be on the opposite side of that equation. They're hoping that a 6-11 6-11 record from here in 2025, that they're going to overperform that going into 2026, right? So you're hoping to get, every team hopes to get better than their previous record over the course of the offseason. But how likely are the Raiders to do that? They do hold the number one overall selection, but how quickly does everything really come around that number one overall selection, which we assume is going to be a quarterback like Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana? How much better are the Giants going to be, who are going into you're now entering a weak head coach search unless some surprising coaches become available or like Bill Belichick returns to the NFL? The Arizona Cardinals, how likely are they to be competitive in 2026 when we're not even sure what the future at quarterback is for that team? They might be on a 2-year plan at quarterback now, and especially waiting to see what happens with Jonathan Gannon when it comes to that. Jeff Duncan over at NOLA.com does a predictions piece, like a crystal ball piece at the end of every season, or at the end of every calendar year to get you ready for the next calendar year. One of his predictions was that the Arizona Cardinals fire Jonathan Gannon and the Saints hire him as a senior defensive assistant because him and Brandon Staley are like best friends. Could be interesting. But bottom line is we don't know what's going to happen at the Arizona Cardinals head coach spot at the moment that I'm recording this. And so these losing teams that were losing teams this year going into next year don't have the greatest outlook. It's not guaranteed, but it sets the New Orleans Saints up for, in any case, a situation where you'd rather play against the Raiders than play against the Chiefs. You'd rather play against the Giants than play against the Commanders, at least in my opinion, based on the quarterback situation there, especially if Jaden Daniels is healthy. You'd rather play against the Arizona Cardinals than the Los Angeles Rams or the San Francisco 49ers. And that's what the Saints are going to be doing in 2026. And so this sets them up to be competitive because, oh, by the way, they're also playing out of those 11 games against losing teams. 6 of those games are against division opponents at home against the Panthers, Falcons, and Bucks. By the way, the Falcons just fired Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, so head coach and general manager, out in Atlanta. One of the things that we kind of looked at back last week. So the Saints, twice in the last 3 years, have been the last opponent for a head coach that was fired. Who'd have thunk? For Atlanta, I mean. And so the Saints have a lot of opportunity ahead of them. Like a lot of people that I heard, not involved with the team, but like fans that I was talking to after the game, during the game, stuff like that, were like, man, even with the loss, like I feel really good because the Saints can get this last place schedule and it might help them out. And I think it can. I think it absolutely can. The other thing that it does is that it locks them into the number 8 overall selection. It's a second year in a row with a top 10 pick. With the 9th overall selection, they got a franchise left tackle potentially in Kelvin Banks Jr., who did leave the game with an ankle injury. Kellen Moore said after the game, though, that it's not a long-term issue, not something that is a long-term concern. Just an ankle injury that, they'll have to deal with early on here in the offseason, but shouldn't cause any issues with like mini camps and OTAs and all those other things. So good news there. But the Saints with the 9th overall selection turned in a really, really strong 2025 draft class, and now they walk into 2026 with good capital. First, second, third round picks. They're going to potentially get a couple of 4th round picks here because we expect that Isaac Yiadom 4th round compensatory selection is going to convey. And so that should help the Saints out quite a bit as well. And so they get the week schedule. They get the top 10 overall selection, right? Not number 10, but they get the number 8 overall selection. So they're in the top 10. And they just have a lot of momentum moving forward and a lot of players that want to be back here or that want to be a part of what the Saints are doing. One of the most important things that New Orleans did over the course of the latter stretch of this season was build a winning culture. You heard Chase Young talk about how like he found a home here in New Orleans and in Brandon Staley's defense. By the way, Chase Young and Cam Jordan, double-digit sacks to both of them this season. That's the first time for a tandem of New Orleans Saints defenders since 2013, it was Junior Gillette and Cam Jordan. So first of all, shout out to Cam Jordan for being a part of both tandems 12 years separated from one another. That's awesome. But shout out to Brandon Staley for getting this team over the 40 sack hump for the first time since 2022 and putting guys in position to succeed, like we saw with both Cam Jordan, who played going into the Atlanta Falcons game, his second lowest snap percentage of his career, yet walks away with 10.5 sacks on the season. And then you have a 10 sack guy across the way from Chase Young or within Chase Young as well. So the Saints have this flourishing defense. They have the quarterback of the future. They have the week schedule going into next year and another top 10 selection. We saw how they did that, how they made that work in this year's draft. Can't wait to see how they make that work in next year's draft as well, or the upcoming draft as well. So things setting up perfectly for New Orleans to be that competitive team that they wanted to be going into next year's season. Coming up next, in order for the Saints to be at their most competitive, they'll need to fix 3 things. And the first of which is a historically bad output in first quarters. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's that time of year. Everybody talks about new year, new me, but really, not what you're looking for isn't necessarily a new you. You just want a less burdened you, one that maybe understands a little bit better your relationships, your emotions, your motivations, all of that. That's where BetterHelp comes into play. That's where therapy comes into play. BetterHelp is amazing. I've been using it for the better part of, 5 years now? And I love it because BetterHelp makes everything super easy. You get connected with a licensed therapist. You can change anytime as well. But they also make it super convenient, right? Flexible, suited to your schedule. It's all online. So you can do video chats. You can do phone calls. You could just do chat messages, whatever you're most comfortable with. All of their therapists are licensed fully in the US. It's absolutely awesome. So go and check them out today. BetterHelp makes it easy for you to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at Game Time. The NFL season might be over for the New Orleans Saints, but maybe if you're traveling out of town, you might end up in a city where an NFL playoff match is going on, and that is something you definitely do not want to miss, and you don't have to, thanks to our friends over at Game Time. The Game Time app is super easy to use. You download it, sign up. I'll tell you your promo code to help you out here in a little bit, but then you just pick your city, and then it shows you all the different events that are going on. So maybe you have an opportunity to get in on an NFL playoff game. Look, they're awesome on television, but they're even better atmosphere-wise in the stands, being able to take all that in. But then maybe you're not in an NFL playoff town. There's NBA games, there's concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Bunch of different events for you to get into. And with the Game Time guarantee, you'll always get a real peace of mind as well. So take all the guesswork, out of buying your NFL tickets. by using Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today and get back to being there live. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints need to fix these three things going into 2026 in order to make sure that they can be their most competitive selves. And if they can get these things done, then I think that they are a runaway team or a potential runaway team in the NFC South in particular. We appreciate you very much making us your first listen, being an everydayer here on the show. Don't forget about our Everydayer Club. My goodness. You can check us out ad-free, $5 a month, $50 a year, or for $15 a month, $150 a year, you can get our All Access program, which is going to be great this offseason. Everything you need to know in terms of rumors, what we're hearing around the draft, free agency, film breakdowns, prospect breakdowns, and much more, including one-on-one texting, Zoom calls, all that as well. Exclusive Q&As come through for that. You can head over to lockedonsaints.supercast.com or click the link in the description to learn more. Absolutely worth your time, especially going into the offseason, which is going to be a busy offseason for the New Orleans Saints. And I think there are three things that this team absolutely must address this offseason. Number one, they have got to get past the first quarter woes that they have. This team was historically bad as a slow start team. They got to get better there. Number two, they need to make sure that they continue to improve what they're doing on the run defense side. And I think they got a lot better towards the end of the season. They held Bijan Robinson, the explosive, probably the best running back in the NFL, or one of the best running backs in the NFL. Derrick Henry's still out there doing what he's doing, which is absolutely incredible. But Bijan held to his lowest total yardage amount of the season against the Saints in this game in Week 18. And not for lack of trying by Atlanta. It's just that literally guys like Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, and Chase Young just dominated this game. We'll dive into a little bit of the defensive performance in tomorrow's episode if you want to come back for that. And then the last thing for me is all about making sure that this team can stay as healthy as possible. They actually did a pretty good job staying healthy this year. You just couldn't tell by the end of the season because it was also compounded with things like they had a backup at left guard, not because of an injury, but because they traded one away. They were so deep into their wide receiver room, not because of injury, although it was eventually because of injury, but not immediately because of injury. It was because they traded one wide receiver away and they parted ways with another. So they actually did a pretty good job staying healthy, but towards the end of the season, you really saw the injury bug creep up and bite this team. And it was one of the reasons why the Saints lost in this game this past, up against the Atlanta Falcons. If they had Chris Olave on the field, which by the way wasn't even an injury thing, it was just the body doing weird things like the body does. Dude had a blood clot in his lung. You can't really do a lot in the weight room to help you with that. But if Devon Bailey was still healthy, then maybe this team would have won that game. If Alvin Kamara was still on the field, maybe they would have won that game. If Taysom Hill was on the field at the end of that game, maybe they would have won that game. Like there's a lot of those ifs, ands, buts still around injury health and stuff like that. So let's go all the way back to point number one, the Saints being a historically bad team in the first quarter. The Saints finished this season with a minus 93 point differential. That means they were outscored by 93 points over the course of the entire season in the first quarter alone. Over the course of the past 25 seasons, which is as far back as True Media goes with quarterly point differential, all the way back to 2020, it's the worst. The worst in the NFL since 2020 in terms of first quarter point differential. Absolutely abysmal to open up games. And this was with Tyler Shough at quarterback. This was with Spencer Rattler at quarterback. This wasn't a quarterback thing. This was a coaching thing. This was a game plan thing. For whatever reason, the one thing Kellen Moore never seemed to get right during the season was how to start strong. And so got to figure that out, especially when your defense has been starting as strong as it starts. You got to be able to match that energy over on the offensive side of the football. The next worst point differential in the first quarter was minus 92 points by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2011. So still even that, a massive gap historically between the last time that a team performed as bad as the New Orleans Saints did this season in the first quarter. So fast starts, improving play in the first quarter, improving defense and offense in the first quarter, improving special teams has to be a big part of this too. I should have made this a 4-point list and absolutely put special teams on there because it was a disaster this season. But New Orleans has got to get that part figured out in terms of the overall how they start games. And so I'm excited to see how they do that going into 2026. I'm not saying that they can't do it. I'm saying that they need to do it, that they should do it, and that it should be a big focus for them going into next year. When it comes to point number 2 and improving the run game, I think we saw some glimpses of what this New Orleans Saints run game can be. They did a good job against Rico Dowdle earlier in the season. They did a good job against Bijan Robinson. They did a great job against Breece Hall. And so just continuing to kind of build on that momentum a little bit and just improving as a defensive line. The defensive interior is a place that you're probably going to be looking to address, bulk up, add some talent, all that. I think that would certainly go a long way for this team as well. Might aid in that fast start too, because you're not giving up as much time of possession in the first quarter if you're not giving up a bunch of rushing yards in the first quarter. And then lastly, just the injury thing. I think Ted Rath did a phenomenal job. Saints did not have a ton of season-ending injuries early on in the season. Like, yeah, they had the Julian Blackmon thing. That was weird. They had the Vernon Broughton thing. That was weird. But outside of that, like Devon Vele's season ended because there were barely any games left. Devin Neal's season ended because there were barely any games left. Like, these things were just kind of late in the year. And so some of this is an NFL problem because the NFL wants to keep adding games and shortening training camps and things like that. And that's not a very good trade-off for players. The NFL, I hope, will eventually realize that as their product gets worse and worse every year. But we love it, don't we? So as long as we're watching, they're going to keep doing what it is they're doing. But I think that that's going to be the other big thing that you'd like to see the Saints improve in, is making sure that they're healthy and that their healthy players make it to week 17. So that's starting game stronger, continuing to improve the run defense, and then, of course, figuring out ways to keep their players on the field for the entire 17-game stretch. If the Saints can do all three of those things going into next year with a weak schedule, a high draft pick, and a big-time culture that players want to be a part of, I have no doubt that this is a New Orleans Saints team that should absolutely be competitive in 2026 and possibly win the division. All right, family, time for a little bit of lanyap here, and I'm just going to go personal on this one. Personal, but still about this. But I just want to say thank you for rolling with us and continuing to be with us here throughout this season. It was an absolute roller coaster of a season, but it was so much fun to cover, and I hope that you enjoyed it as well. I know it was hard to enjoy it early. This team was 2-8, 1-8, 2-8, 2-10 at one point, but then just that last stretch of the season was just so much fun to see kind of that complete turn on a dime that this team made, the spark and rejuvenation that they got from Tyler Shough, the incredible seasons, the incredible stories that you got from guys like Chase Young making a full-on I'm back statement by the time that the season was over. Charlie Smith, one of the best stories in the NFL this year, getting to see all of these young rookies contribute all the way down to 7th rounders like Maliki Montavao, as well as Fadil Diggs during different parts of the season, watching all of this kind of settle in with a new coach, new quarterback, new system, new defensive coordinator, all that. It was a ton of fun to cover this all throughout. I hope that you enjoyed this season. And I very, very much hope that you leave the end of this season feeling far more optimistic than you left at the end of the 2024-2025 season, because you absolutely should feel more optimistic about where this team will be in 2026 than you had any reason to feel about where they would be in 2025. In 2025, actually kind of worked out for New Orleans. In 2026 is on par, or on pace rather, to be an even bigger year for the Saints. So very excited to continue to do that, but I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. You've chosen to trust me. You've chosen to support me. You've chosen to be here to support the show, and you didn't have to do any of those three things. And yet for some reason, I'm going to get emotional, yet for some reason, you made the decision to do it. And I cannot thank you enough. I tell everybody that I meet on the streets and at, Rouse's or Whole Foods or wherever it is that I am. Yeah, I'm bougie like that. All right. I'll go to Whole Foods. What you going to do? You changed my life. Changed my life. Gave me the opportunity to be able to come back home. Give me the opportunity to work my dream job, to do what it is that I love. And I'm so grateful that I get to do it. I try to remember all the time that, this is for you. It's not for me. It's for you. But I'm so grateful that I get to do it and that we get to do this together. So looking forward to much, much more over the course of the offseason. I ain't going anywhere. 5 days a week, bonus episodes, all that kind of stuff, plus the Everyday or All Access program. All of that will be available to you every single day here on Locked On Saints. Thank you so much for the love and support. I love you. I love you. I love you. All right, family, coming up in tomorrow's episode, we'll take a deep dive into the Saints' performance against the Falcons and how things can build moving ahead. We appreciate you very much, as always. Make it as a part of your day, part of your routine for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Learn how the family's doing them, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.